everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, great. So today I'm going to be going over the Eclipse IDE, hopefully sharing some useful tips and tricks for you all. So my name's Yasmin, and I'm a software developer at IBM. I'm also an Eclipse microprofile committer, so I contribute to microprofile specifications for OpenLiberty. So we're going to be going over a few things today. We're going to be looking at the appearance, investigation, navigation, debugging, and code shortcuts for Eclipse IDE. So who uses the Eclipse IDE already and really heavily relies on it? Okay, so most of you, great. I'm kind of aiming this talk at a range, so if you haven't used it before, you're not too keen on it, hopefully it can sway you over to using it. Or if you're really familiar with Eclipse IDE, hopefully you can still learn something and make your life a bit easier when you're doing day-to-day development work. So first of all, we're going to be going over the appearance. So here I've got my Eclipse IDE, and we're going to be making your own workspace. So in the window, I'm going to go on Perspective and save Perspective as. So this is really useful if you've been moving around tabs or you've got different views open that you wouldn't normally have, but you want to keep it for later use. So if I go on Perspective, save Perspective as, I'm going to save this one as my Java default and save it. And you can switch between those workspaces. So if I go on Command FN F8, or it will be Control if you're using Windows, you've got the perspectives there that you can use. So if I move over, or the other one. So if I was to change this, maybe get rid of console, maybe get rid of debug as well, and make one bigger. I don't know about you, but when I'm developing, I kind of make a mess out of all my tabs, and I get really confused. So I quite like using this. And then you can just go to Reset Perspective, and it goes back to how it was a few minutes ago, which is quite good when you're like demonstrating or anything as well, and you just want to make it neat really quickly. So another thing to do, which is really good, as you can see on the left here, I've got my Project Explorer. I've got quite a few modules and packages. If you only wanted to view a certain amount, let's say you've got like hundreds of modules or hundreds of packages, you can make a working set. So if I go on Select Working Set, I'm going to make a new one. And I just want to filter out my Java modules. So the workspace content at the moment, this is everything in my workspace. I've got these three here. But let's say I only really wanted to work on the module one. So I'll add that in. I'll get rid of the logging class because I don't need that in there. And I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it module. Set. And finish. OK. And now I can just switch over. So as you can see there, it minimized everything else, made it really neat. If I want to go back to my window working set of everything else, I can go here. But it just makes it easier to view and search for files and Java files when it's in a working set. Next of all, I'm going to show you modules. Does anyone use modules quite a bit, rely on them, create them at all? No, not too familiar with them? Okay, so here I've got an existing Java project, and I don't have modules in there. So I'll just right-click, go to Configure, and create module info. So it'll ask me what I want the name for it to be, and the name of it and module is fine. So it's automatically made it, and can you see it's added requires Java logging? So it's recognized that I've already got an import here for the logging logger, and I'm using it. But my module's going to require it for me. I'm going to do something else now, and I'm going to add something to my build path. So I right-clicked on my build path there, Java build path, and I'm on libraries. And I'm going to add another library that I'm going to require. And I'm going to add the JUnit library and say I was going to make some tests. So JUnit 5, and that's fine. Apply and close. Now you can see on my build path, JUnit 5 has popped up, which is what I wanted. And if I was going to, for instance, make a test method, because I've got the library, I can just use the template. So I'm going to type in test_J. If I press Control and space, the template for that test method pops up. So I didn't need to write that. That was just in automatically. And I've got an error here. And it's saying in order to solve the error, I can do a few of these things. What I'm going to do is add the required library to my module info and save it. So my error messages have gone. When I look into my module info.java, it's required this library which I've used, so the Jupyter API. Next of all, you can see my packages here all start with com.demo, which is really common with what I'm working on at the moment, the runtime that I work on for Liberty. Our bundle names are so long, and it's all the same thing. It gets really frustrating. So what I'm going to do is look at my preferences with command and then comma. And all of your preferences will pop up here. I'm going to want to go to General and Appearance. Java Appearance. And I've got a long list of different things I can choose here. So I'm going to do something else as well. I'm going to sort my library entries alphabetically in the package. So before that, my packages would have all been non-alphabetical, but here it's just easier to view them. If I want to change my package names, I'm going to go on abbreviate package names. And as I started them all with com.demo, I'm going to change them to just demo in capital letters. Apply and close. Can you see here, my package name has been abbreviated. It was com.demo, it's now just demo.module. It's just easier to see what actually matters, which is usually the last part. Now we're going to look into how to investigate some code. I don't know about you, but I quite like seeing who last modified the line of code, not just to moan at them if they've done something horribly wrong. I'm sure no one does that. But also to ask for help, ask for expertise if they've been editing it, etc. So what I'll do is I'll go right-click onto my Java class, and I go on team. So this is not a Git repository. If it was, it would also show Git history. But right now, this is just showing the local history. And 1 second. It does pop up, I promise. It's just because it's a demo. Might just be the window. Okay, window, show view, and history. Anyone know why it's just not popping up? All right, well, I'm expecting to... Pardon? Good point. And... Okay, it's not popping up, but trust me, it would say all of the last edited lines when they were last edited, and you can look at the revisions as well. You can also see the quick difference between who last edited them. So in order to do that, you just do right-click. Second. Here you go. So yeah, in the preferences, I've just gone to General Editors, quick difference. And what this would show on your file is all of the different changes that have happened per line and who did them. So as I said, I'm doing this locally, so it's only myself who's just made this file, as you saw. But if it was to be a GitHub repository, it would look something like this. So on the left-hand side, you'd see each committer, which line of code was edited by who, and the revisions. So you can also see things like the GitHub ID and the exact commit that was done by. Next of all, I'll show you some navigations. As I mentioned, I'm quite used to really big pieces of code. I'm used to hundreds of bundles, hundreds of packages. And so I can get quite lost sometimes. So what it's good to do is bookmark certain lines. So if I go on to I'll go into this Java class. Don't know why it's showing up like that. 1 second. All right, I'll just bookmark this one to show you. So if I right-click and I go Add Bookmark and Add. Now when I go on Window, really hope this show view works this time, and Other, and I go Bookmarks. 1 second. I think there we go. Don't know why that's... Sorry, I've messed up my perspective so much. I think I've completely did the wrong one. Research, perspectives. Window. Here we go. So at the bottom here, all my bookmarks have popped up. So if I'm on a completely different class, maybe a different package, I'll just go here and it will send me directly to that line of code. So I've got another one here when I go on login class. The exact line that I bookmarked, which is this one, does pop up. Next, I'm going to do tasks. So like many of you, I bet when you're developing, you think, oh, I'll do that later. And then sometimes you never get around to it, or you forget what you was going to do. So, for example, here, if I go on, I don't know why the font's all gone a bit strange. Let's see if that'll work. Okay, there we go. So if I make a comment called to do, and then explain what I plan on doing. So I'm going to go down here and make another method. So to do, make other method, and save it. You can also do a fix me, so that's to update code. It will just separate how it's viewed. So fix me, and I want to change the name of this file. I'm not going to do it yet. I'll get around to it later. And then when I go on show view and I'll go on tasks, the tasks that I've made are down here and you can quickly navigate to them. So let's say I'm even on a different file, I'm on complete, and I want to go back to what I had. I'll go on change name and it will go back to the tasks I had. And then I can go on to do, and it would say make other method. So all of my tasks are organized in that tab. Next thing, which makes it a lot easier to navigate around your code, is obviously search. But I find it sometimes quite hard to know exactly what to search. So if I just do Command 3, you've got a list of things you could search for here. So you can search for any actions. So if I wanted like the bookmarks action, task, anything listed there. So instead of navigating throughout the whole of the Eclipse, you've just got a whole list and you can search through the whole of the IDE. If I want to search for a specific type, I'll put Command, not H, Command Shift H. And here, all of the classes I want to check are here. So if I wanted string, and then go here, it will go to where it is in the library. And I can view it from there. It's just an easy way of searching classes, even if they're in libraries that you're importing. And if I wanted to specifically search through my own code, just click search, and you've got file search here. And the working sets I made earlier make it a lot easier to search as well. So you can just search for bundles that you're only working in, projects, modules that you're only specifically caring about at that moment in time. So next part is debugging. So does anyone use the Eclipse debugger regularly? Yeah? Cool. So I've just been going over, as I said, hopefully you'll learn some new things or some best practices when going through that. So I'm sure you're aware, to make a breakpoint, you just right-click and toggle breakpoint. I put it in a silly place there. We're not really good to put it on a instructor. Okay. There we go. So if I was going to make a breakpoint, what this just does, it starts off with 0, keeps adding to it, and prints the result for each method. For some strange reason, let's say I was expecting number 5 to come out of this line here. But when I run my code, it would instead return 3, which obviously is right, but if we're not sure about that and we want to debug, we can use my breakpoint here. So if I run this with debug mode, it's not going to print it out, it's going to halt at the line I put a breakpoint on, and you can see here I has the value of 0. If I wanted to then go into that line of code and see what the outcome would be, I'll go on that little arrow up here and step into it, or you can press F5. And it will update. Keep going through, and it will just go step by step throughout my code to see what changes are being made and if they're as I expected. This is really good for like race conditions, or if you've got a bit of spaghetti with your code with so many different libraries and things coming in and you're not familiar with the data structures you're using. You can also, as you saw, this is from the system out that I'm going through. So it's just navigating to the library it was imported from and going step by step each line. I find this useful if I'm using code that I'm not familiar with. So if I'm just using external open source code that I didn't develop or work on myself, but my code is using it behind the scenes. And when I eventually, it even goes down to character manipulation and things like that here. So as I said, run it, end up with 3. Next of all, we're going to look at how to get the most out of your breakpoints. So you can make these breakpoints conditional. I'm going to right-click here and go to breakpoint properties. You've also got hit count. So let's say you've got a loop, for instance, and you don't want to run the debug. You don't want it to stop until it gets to a certain amount of time. So let's say you put it to 5. This debug breakpoint won't hit the breakpoint until this line's been hit 5 times. You can also have conditional, so you can set what variables are equal to what, or if other conditions are happening, and then run the breakpoint. If I want to then just enable or disable my breakpoint, obviously you can right-click there, disable, and enable it. So this window here will show all my breakpoints. Don't have many at the moment, so let's say I make a few more. Toggle breakpoint. Let's say you had like maybe dozens in your application. It's quite easy just to sort them. So you can sort them by name, or you can sort them by when they were created. You can disable all of them at the same time or remove all of them instead of going one by one. So because I'm no longer debugging, I'll just put remove, and we can go from there. So is anyone familiar with trigger points? We'll use them. A couple of hands. Okay, so what a trigger point is it would only act as a break. It would mean that breakpoints are basically disabled until a trigger has been hit. So if I toggle this as a breakpoint, as you can see, this is going to be the first method, so it's going to be, one second, toggle breakpoint, right there. What I'm going to do is set the second method as a trigger. And if I've done that right, it should hopefully mean one other method isn't going to get the breakpoint hit because it hasn't been triggered yet. So I'm going to set this one as a trigger point, and I'll put run and go to debug. As you can see here, although J started off as 0, it would mean that the first method called has already run and 1 is added to it. Can you see here at the top, the value is already 1, meaning that one breakpoint was completely ignored because it wasn't triggered yet. If I keep going over, I then goes to 2, 3, and it's outputted. So you can make sure that although you've got loads of breakpoints, if you know that some of your code is working as you expect, you just put a trigger in the middle and then all the breakpoints before it completely ignored, and you can just rush through when debugging. And I'll go on to my breakpoints and get rid of those. 4, Okay, and anyone familiar with trace points? Got one. Okay, so typically when I'm debugging, what I like to do is just make loads of system out saying, yeah, this was run, this is this method, until I learned about trace points. So trace points stop you doing that, and it would just make traces in your debug saying what method and what class you're on. So if I right-click here and put toggle trace point, and then run in debug mode, you can see here in my console it's got each method with trace points, and I haven't manipulated my code at all. It would mean that when I go onto GitHub, I haven't missed out any system outs, which I often do when committing, which my team often hate. You can make that in the same way as you did with the breakpoints. You can make that trace point conditional as well. Next of all, if you're stuck and you need to look at some documentation really quickly, if you just hover over the class or method in Eclipse, the Java doc does pop up. You can also view it in your browser. Not meant to be relying on Wi-Fi here, so I've already got it up. And then it's just easy to see. If you want to be really good and make your own Java docs and make it easier for your colleagues, you can create your own. So if you just do / and then 2 asterisks and enter, it will create the Java doc for that method or class. So for instance, I've got just parameter I in there, and then all it's returning, so like I incremented. Save it, and now when I hover over, it will come up with what Java doc I've just produced. So I don't know about you all. Are you using any code assistants or anything with AI at the moment? Sort of some shaking heads. I wish I was, but unfortunately, my company doesn't allow me to use it when I'm developing open source software for licensing issues, which is really frustrating. So I just make the most out of the Eclipse shortcuts instead. It's the next best thing, I guess. So I'm going to show you now some autocomplete. So here I've just got a public class and it's empty, but what I'm missing is my main method. So what I'm going to do is just type in main. I'll put control and space, and all the templates pop up, and I want the first one, which is the main method, like so. What I also want is a system out, just to say hello. So I'm going to put sys o control and space, and again I've got a template up there, and I'll just put hello world. So minimal code written there, but not as good as the AI code assistants, but we make do. You can also make public methods, so same way, control, space, enter. If you want to make a private one, control, space, and enter, and they're there. Another one that I'm going to do, let's say I make an array here of names. So just some simple strings. And I want to make a for loop just to iterate over those. So instead of writing it out all myself, I'm just going to get Eclipse to do it and do control space. And it was giving me a wide range of for loops I can use here, but what I want to do is iterate over an array or iterable. And it's just done for me, the for, string, string, and name. And then I can just use the same thing I did earlier, which is sys o, in order to output all of the names. Just makes it a bit easier. So I don't know about you, but what I often do is things like this and then realize this should be in its own method. And an easy way of just moving that up and down is option and then down. And it just does the indentation for you automatically as well. So if I want to put that in its own method and just save it, it's just done. Sorry, that error's annoying me. And if you want to make it uppercase, because as I've said here, I've put a hello world, but that should be a constant. So what I normally do is just and I always get it wrong, that constants have to have uppercase. So you just do, I think it's, yeah, Command, Shift, and then X in order to make it uppercase, or Command, Shift, and Y to all make it lowercase, which is just a lot easier when you're editing like variable names, things like that, or the strings itself. Okay, so has anyone learned anything new today? Or anything they weren't too sure about using? Yeah, we got some raised hands. Okay, so I feel like I've done my job well in that sense. Does anyone have any comments, any questions about IDE? Anything really painful that they wish was in the IDE? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Great talk. Regarding the saving of those perspectives,
Yeah.
as you have get into this trap as well, is there some kind of reset to defaults?
Yeah, I was looking for that button right in front of me and I couldn't find it and I was panicking. It's a very good point. So what I've done, what I did, can you remember when I put save perspective as? And I went on my Java default one and I got a pop-up. I should get it now. Yeah, are you sure you want to override it because Java already exists? What I probably should have done when I was demoing it was window, perspective, save perspective as, and giving it a new name or a different kind. So Java 2, and save. And now when I go on it, I'm going to have Java. I'm using a lot of Java ones here for messing this up. Java, Java browsing, and then Java 2. And then I believe this is actually the Java one I wanted in the first place, so that's helpful. But obviously when you do mess it up, reset perspective, and it will go back to how it was. You can also discard any perspectives customization when you do that. So that is the overall one that I had. That makes sense?
So the discard checkbox is the one to reset to real defaults. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay, thank you everyone. It's great. Thanks.